Good morning or good afternoon, whatever time you're listening to us. Welcome back to the Layman's AI podcast. I am Adam.
And my name is Brian.
And today's episode, we thought we would talk to you guys about how to get started with AI. I believe, if I recall correctly, Brian, we had a listener or somebody you know that reached out to you and said, I like your guys' podcast, but I think you should do this topic. Is that how we got onto this one?
Yeah, I get suggestions from some friends and family I talked about, and this person, I forget who it was. I've had a few people give me suggestions because everybody
Uh-huh.
wants to give you a suggestion on your podcast.
Amen.
But yeah, they said, you know what? Actually, I think it was my wife's stepfather. I'm gonna have
Oh,
to give him
okay.
credit because he's an avid listener. I'm gonna have to give him credit on there. But he said, how do you start? Like it's like people
Yeah.
don't know how to start. And they always say the first step is always the hardest. And that's like true with anything in life. So I'm like, you know what? Why don't we do how can we get started with AI? And I figure that's a pretty good one to start off with.
I'd have to agree. This is a good topic, and I will speak on my behalf. I know right now, if I was getting into it, and I've been into this for over 18 months now, or feels like even longer than that, when you go on YouTube and you go on things like Reddit or social media, it's easy to feel like you're behind in AI because you
Mhm.
see all this hype videos. And that's a whole nother episode itself, these hype videos and how somewhat ridiculous they are in terms of expectations. But it does make you feel as if, oh my gosh, I haven't been using this. I don't know the vocabulary these people are using. I don't know what to do, how to get started.
Exactly.
And so, why don't we start with how you and I got started? Tell me I always call it an AI journey. So, why don't you tell me a little bit
Mhm.
about how your AI journey started and some things you did along the way?
Yeah, so mine's kind of a humorous one. I, first started to hear about all these LLMs and everything, and I actually started off with Copilot because Copilot
Hmm.
was included in the Microsoft 365 subscriction. I think they might have changed it. I can't keep track hardly anymore, but I just started like messing with it a little bit, and I think we can actually go back to Amazon's Alexa might be, a form of an LLM too, because you would ask it
Yes.
questions and it would give you the responses. But it kind of started off just asking ridiculous questions, like how much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? And I just imagine there's people like that create responses to these obviously ridiculous questions, which
Hmm.
is kind of funny. But, then I started, work with it a little bit and I started doing like the image generation. And I created some of the most ridiculous images you've ever seen. I'll put mine up against anybody's, and I'm just like, okay, this is pretty neat, but I'm not worried about it taking over anytime soon. And then I heard about music generators, so I started like
Yeah.
making a little bit of music and everything. I know that's kind of a soft spot for a lot of artists out there, but that's a whole nother, episode as well. But, just kind of playing with the tools really and just seeing where we're at right now and like what the possibilities are. That's
Yes.
kind of how I got started.
That's awesome. I think if you remember from episode one, I said I got started because a former high school principal, we caught a student cheating and he admitted to using an AI tool. And I remember busting him thinking, what AI tool? Like artificial
Hmm.
intelligence is not a thing. He was like, I use Jasper AI. I'm like, who's Jasper? And that evening I was hooked. I was
Yeah.
hooked. I found out what ChatGPT was and I used it. I think my favorite part was I used ChatGPT to the point where I maxed out my credits that night
Hmm.
trying to see what this could do. All I did was just start asking it questions. I didn't know anything about prompting. I just started giving it essays, like when I was still a social studies teacher. So, like, what would George Washington think of America's two-party system? And
Uh-huh.
I remember thinking the answer was pretty accurate with what I believe George Washington would respond because George Washington was against the two-party system and he warned about that in his farewell address. But
I
politics aside, oh yeah,
Yeah, I reference that all the time. Yeah, but
it
yeah,
is funny.
well,
It's
that's
very
as deep
easy to
as we'll go
reference.
with that's as deep as we'll go with that one right
Yes, that's
there.
as deep as we'll go. And you know what? Founding father may have had some things right, may have not have, but you know what?
We all
It
do.
was a good topic of conversation. And then I
Hmm.
started having a back and forth with ChatGPT. Then I started watching YouTube videos to improve my AI craft and see what other AI tools are out there. And I learned a lot about prompting. And what
Hmm.
I'm proud to say with my journey, my AI journey, is I really got into how to prompt to make sure that I got accurate answers way before I started exploring other tools. And I'm really glad I did that because as I started to explore other AI tools, I learned that the LLMs like ChatGPT and Gemini can do a lot of the things that these other specific tools have if you're
Hmm.
good at prompting and know how to coach it to get what you need to get or scaffold the answers so that you could get what you need to get.
Yeah, that is kind of the trick right there. If you just kind of, you know, I think I've stated this before, the more tasks you ask for it at one
Hmm.
time, the less accurate it could be over time. Like if you ask,
Yeah.
one task at a time. And I will say, if you're going to use an LLM to do anything, like work on something at work or what have you, I will say try one task at a time. One task,
Yes.
because what these LLMs do is they save your conversation, and then you could say, okay, summarize this whole conversation, and then it can kind of go through that. And don't be afraid to correct it as well. I
That's right.
remember I remember one time I was using it to help me write some code for a project for the class I was taking, and I kind of typed it in, and it said do this and this and this, and I, tried to, test it in the software or what have you, and I looked at it, and I'm like, okay, this is wrong, and I told it, I'm like, oh, you should have did this instead of this, and it's like, oh yeah, you're absolutely right.
Hmm.
Where it's kind
Yep.
of, I think people would be afraid to correct it, but don't be afraid to correct it, because it does make mistakes. And I remember seeing some code it gave me, and I'm like, wait a minute, I can simplify this a little more.
Hmm.
So I typed it in, did the same thing, and I told, I think I was using Claude at the time, be like, hey, I did this, and it's a simpler way to do it. And so Claude came back, he's like, you're absolutely right. That's a good idea.
And
So,
and it's interesting because it'll kind of mirror what you gave it as a result of that within that
hmm
thread. By thread, we're talking about the conversation that you're having with the AI or the prompts that you're putting in and the answers that you're getting. That's considered a thread, and
yeah.
it will correct the behavior if you do that. I think
hmm
for me, one of my famous ones was I used the famous test. I'm not sure if you've done this or not, Brian, but you ask an LLM how many R's are in the word strawberry.
mm
Most LLMs respond with two, and then
mm
you correct it and say the actual answer is three R's
Ah.
in the word strawberry. And it's funny to this day that is still one of the measurements for an LLM is how many R's are in the word strawberry. So
Mm.
don't be afraid to go to Brian's point. Don't be afraid to correct it and say that it's wrong. And I've also done that on opinionated questions as well to try to. I one night I was a little bored, didn't have anything better to do. It's amazing how often that happens when you turn 40 and have kids.
Yeah.
And I actually had ChatGPT debate Gemini on who was the better football dynasty, the 80s Niners or the 70s Steelers.
Mm.
And the answer both of them kind of came up with was the 70s Steelers. And I had to tell them as a Browns fan, no, that's wrong. It was the
hmm
89ers. So
hmm
it was interesting conversation between the two of them. And I was enjoying it. I thought it was funny that one of them appealed to emotions before the other one did.
Yeah, that's yeah, a lot of opinions going on right there. I'll see people, they'll, make a Facebook page. They ask ChatGPT who the all-time MLB starting lineup is, and you get the typical
Yeah.
ones and everything like that. And yeah, I mean it's fun. Like it is fun, but I think, you gotta come up realize that this is not to be taken directly. I mean, even LLMs will state at the bottom, AI can make mistakes. Check your work. And I think you
Absolutely.
really need to check that. And that kind of goes back. I've, made this statement before. If you're going to use AI to code, you still have to learn how to code. Like, and if you learn how to code, you will use this so much better. And that goes true, I think, with
Yeah.
any profession that you're in. If you know your profession, you can still use this AI tool for your profession, but you still need to know that profession.
Hmm. I think the same goes for not just coding, but also prompting. I saw a unique illustration. I think it was on LinkedIn, and it was by a coder who basically said prior to AI tools, they would spend about 75% of their time writing the code and then 25% correcting the code of
hmm
about their time. And now, since AI, they ask AI to do it, and they spend about 25% of their time writing the prompt, and then they spend 75% of their time fixing the mistakes that the
hmm
AI has made. I feel it's the same way with prompting. And for those of you who don't remember, prompting is literally the command that you're giving the AI, what you're telling it to do. There are, for the most part, you need to use short prompts, short and to the point. But there are ways to do long, complex prompts. But to Brian's point that he brought up earlier, if you ask follow-up questions, there could be confusion as a result of that if your follow-up questions are just as long as your initial prompt. There are these power prompts out there that you
Hmm.
can use that can get you very good complex information with very little hallucination on the result of the AI tool. But it is something you have to
Yeah.
learn. It's a skill you got to work on, and
Hmm.
it all starts with you starting by doing simple tasks with AI tools.
Yeah, exactly. And that kind of, goes to the point. Remember, it's a tool. It's not your replacement. Like if you treat it as a
Right.
tool, it will be much better. But, on that note, kind of the question is, how do I get started? And we were kind of discussing, where do I start with AI? How do I start? And, we came up with three phases of life. If you're a student right now, you're looking at it one way. If you are, just starting your career, which I think, we've made that statement before, I'm just starting my career and all of a sudden AI may have that entry level job or what have you. And, what about, me and you? We've already been working in our career for a
Right.
while and now all of a sudden AI is here. How do we stay relevant? So let's start. Like, if you're a high school student or a college student, what do we do? Adam, what do you think we do?
I love this question because I think it makes a big difference between high school students, college students, and even graduate students, like adults our age who are still attending college and still doing the coursework. I will tell you, I would use AI as a tool, and I would feel no shame in it whatsoever. You can use ChatGPT and Gemini. Those are probably going to be the two, and
Hmm.
Claude and Copilot, but we'll probably use ChatGPT, Gemini. You can use those to break down concepts from a class. You can use it to create study guides for you. And here's something that's very important. Time.
Hmm.
Time is a luxury, and the older we get, we know that time's a very big luxury.
Hmm.
You can upload PDFs to Gemini, to ChatGPT, and
Hmm.
get the important points and an outline from it, and it's usually very accurate. It hardly ever hallucinates.
Yeah, that's
Eh,
one thing to definitely use right there. Just like kind of test it. I say like just
mhm,
sort of test it right now is
right.
sort of where I would go into that. And like you said, if you're taking notes in class, write down your notes and everything, and then pay attention.
Hmm.
Learn the subject. I think it goes back to my earlier point, and I will repeat this probably every episode. Learn the subject you want AI to help you with. Like, don't let
Correct.
AI take over that subject. Always know the subject. And as you're a student, learn the subject. And then as you're learning, take the notes, take your ideas, and you can throw them into an LLM. And there's, the new one out. What is it? The Notebook LM
Oh,
by
I love
Google.
Notebook LM.
And
Yep.
there's some other ones, and you put your notes all in there, and that will help you on your journey, so to
Yes.
say. And that's kind of, I know I struggle with this a little bit myself, as I'm old school. I think we were talking about this, off air, bro, a little bit. I am used to saving on my C drive in the folder and everything like that, and I've actually read an article, computer professor or professor who's teaching computer science or whatever, and a lot of the kids now don't know what a folder is because everything is done automatically for you, which is kind of
Wow.
a bad thing because AI still uses the folder concept. So that's something
Yes.
you're going to have to learn. Like I said, learn the subject.
And I'll share. I got to talk about Notebook LM because, in my
Hmm.
opinion, I'm an educator. And in my opinion, that is the most powerful learning tool that's out there right now that I have played with, reviewed, and used. If I was a student right now, high school, college, grad school, every
Hmm.
course I take would have its own Notebook LM. You can make many of these. By the way, this tool I'm talking about, it's a free tool as long as you have a Gmail, which is
Hmm.
free.
Hmm.
So there's no reason not to get started. You go to Notebook LM, you put in your Gmail, you can upload up to 50 criteria or 50 evidence. So what I would do is I would take everything the professor gives me or everything my teacher gives me, every PDF, every assignment, if it's digitized, and I would put it on there as an evidence. And
Hmm.
then it can create study guides, mind
Hmm.
maps, even a podcast that is a male and
Mm.
female voice talking like you and I are talking right now that can summarize the information I wanted to give. So that's powerful because if I'm an auditory learner,
Hmm.
I'm going to learn by listening to that podcast while I'm on my way to school
Wow.
or I'm on my way to work. I'm going to
Yeah,
listen to it.
and yeah, one point on that. We are not AI generated voices. We are real human beings. I would like to
Yes.
get that out there right now
Yes, we are as real as can
before
be.
anybody before anybody
Yes.
starts. But no, that's interesting because yeah, I admit I don't know a lot of these tools like right now. This is so new to
Hmm.
me. And it would have been nice to have these tools. I think um anybody who used an abacus back in the day would have loved to have a computer growing up, or a
Yeah,
slide, or actually no, slide rules were before the
that's
calculator.
correct.
Like it was like the abacus, the slide rules, then the calculator came out. That's what it was.
Now that you bring that up, I wonder if there was ever a study done on those that used the abacus versus those who grew up using the calculator. If
Hmm.
those who used the abacus had a better understanding of the fundamentals of calculus as a result of
Hmm.
the tool that they used. I was curious about that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That would be something interesting.
We should ask
Something like
Perplexity AI. Oh,
that.
well, since we're
Yeah.
talking about education, if I'm in high
Hmm.
school or college, I might have mentioned this in episode one. The tool that I use the most, I use ChatGPT a lot, but frankly, when it comes to looking for information that's AI generated and powered, or not AI generated, but AI powered in terms of finding information, I use Perplexity AI. Big
Hmm.
fan of that. It is free as well. There is a paid portion, but it is free. It can get you
Hmm.
information on topics and
Yeah.
provides the relevant source for you and
Hmm.
is not search engine optimized. So
Okay.
it's if in Google, if you don't know, if you pay a little bit more or things like that, if you have the right keywords, you tend to get bumped up in the search. Perplexity doesn't do it like that. It tries to find
Okay.
the most relevant source and it gives it to you so you can find it, which is pretty cool. If
Hmm.
I'm learning right now, in fact, if I was a high school student, college student, I'd probably use Perplexity first before I would use Notebook LM because I would use Perplexity to get my sources for my Notebook LM.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that's yeah, if you're a student, use these tools and like figure it out because it's going to help you later in life. So, what if I'm not a student now? What if I just
Okay.
graduated college? I am just starting my career and I'm finally out of that little bubble between a kid and a grown up, and I'm a
Hmm.
full-blown grown up right now.
Yep.
'Cause I think, we've stated this before. This is probably the scariest point at this moment for like the age brackets is people who are just starting because companies are starting to look for ways to use AI for the entry level positions.
Yes.
So if I am starting out, how do I do this? Like, what do I use?
Well, again, it goes back to make sure you understand you use it as a tool to help you. So you want to use it to stand out. I will share with you the first thing I did with the first true use of AI that I used in work, not just research, not just learning, but
Hmm.
in work. I used it to draft emails for me and not specific, nothing that had like a lot of names in it or had data that really shouldn't have been
Hmm.
shared or confidentiality. I didn't violate any of that because I was well aware AI remembers everything you put into it.
Hmm.
So that is something to know if you're getting started. So if you put personal information, it's in there. Do I think it could be used against you if you put it in there one time? Probably not, but you know what? Not worth it. So what
Yeah.
I did was I used it to draft emails for me, in particular like weekly announcements and things like that that I would send out to my staff. I'm a former principal, so I would send out stuff to staff and I would make sure it was clarified in reading it. And what it
Hmm.
did a very good job of was it gave me a format that made sense in terms of how it formatted the email. So that was my first practical use of it. And if I'm early in my career, I would gladly use AI to help me craft emails.
Yeah, I mean that's it goes back to automating the process. I mean, I've,
Hmm.
stated I have a background in the automation industry, and that's what we've done on factory floors and stuff like that. We've automated that process. Instead of hiring somebody to come in 40 hours a week, sit down and turn one screw every for 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week,
Yeah.
we, create a machine that does it for you. And, the whole concept was, oh, you're taking our jobs away. It's like I'm setting you free.
Yeah.
That was always my perception. It's like you can find something much better because who wants to sit in a chair and screw in a screw for 40 hours a week?
Right.
And now the what AI has done is sort of automated the white collar
Hmm.
um tasks and everything right
Yeah,
now.
especially some of those mundane tasks that come with the white collar positions.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, like writing emails, like some emails are the same thing over and over again, or I have to
Hmm.
write a TPS report. I think you can get the movie reference
Oh,
right
oh, I
there.
got the movie reference right off the bat on that one.
Yeah, so
Yes.
we'll let everyone see if they know the movie reference right there. But like reports like that, which are basically the same thing, like if I'm, testing a machine or whatever, and I write down the same things every time, and then I could use that to automate the reporting process and everything. So my mind is now free to
Hmm.
do more complex tasks or whatever. Um, learn how to automate this process because you're not going to survive if you don't.
That's right.
And I think like one more thing I would kind of say to, professionals coming into the workforce, look for some sort of AI certification. I would say kind of use that to enhance
Yeah.
any of your degree or what have you, because if you get like some kind of AI certification, like anything, that would really help you out in this getting your career going.
It will. And I don't think people realize that there's lots of options out there that are relatively affordable, realistic,
Hmm.
can be done
Yes.
on your time. I
Hmm.
have seen free ones. I don't know if they hold as much weight as something from a college or a university, but I'm sure they
Hmm.
still hold some sort of weight. And
Yeah.
along the lines of if you're just getting started in your career, thinking about this, something you can do is like with ChatGPT and Gemini. What if you don't have your job yet? You haven't landed it yet. You can, if you got an interview coming up, you can upload the job description of the job you're applying for to like Google Gemini and say,
Hmm.
provide me some possible or potential interview questions that an employer may ask for this position
Yeah.
to interview prep. That's a great way to use AI, because
Yeah.
chances are those places are using AI to generate the questions they want to ask anyways.
Hmm. Yeah, and maybe Um, kind of what I'm thinking here is if you have your resume or what have you,
Oh
you
yeah.
could take your resume and you could take all these job descriptions and everything like that, and you say,
Hmm.
does this apply to my resume? Is this what I'm looking for? And you can start weeding out, jobs that, maybe
Right.
you think it's okay, but really it's not. And then you could apply for fewer positions like that and like find some other
Something
positions like
more
that.
meaningful. I
Yeah.
really hope the listeners are paying attention to what you said because you nailed it in terms of you asked AI to help you say what's in the resume, not
Hmm.
write the resume for you.
Yeah.
I hope some people know if you ask AI to write the resume for you and you upload it online, it will
They're
get
gonna know.
caught it'll be red flagged as an AI written resume, and they may not even assume you're a
Yeah.
real person. I don't know what the details are of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't do that. But definitely, there's nothing wrong with uploading your resume, the job description, and then asking it to critique your resume.
Hmm.
I've actually asked AI to critique a presentation I was able to upload when ChatGPT first had the feature. I was able to upload a PowerPoint. I know that's old school, but I
Hmm.
uploaded a PowerPoint and I asked it to critique it and see what I was missing. You know what? It was awesome. It was
Yeah.
awesome. I spent 3 slides on something that was nice to know information, and it told me to
Hmm.
revise it, and I was missing a huge component.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
I know. Yeah, I do a lot with checking my grammar. I think I have
oh
good
yes.
grammar. I mean, I'm not a writer. I'm not an English major.
Hmm.
Maybe an English major would be insulted by such a thing, but I'm like, check my grammar, and it kind of gives a few like different pronunciations, kind of word it this way, use this word instead of that word, and I read it again. I'm like, okay, this is better, but it's still my words, and I think like what you were saying before, your resume is going to get red flagged. Just keep in mind, GPT-0 is a thing, and
Hmm.
people are using it. College professors are using it.
Hmm.
Recruiters are using it, and it detects whether or not
Yeah.
you're using AI.
Yeah, if you guys don't
Because,
know, ChatGPT Zero is one of many online tools that is it's an AI tool that identifies how much a percentage of the text that was submitted was written by AI. It's
hmm.
fairly accurate. It can be tricked, but the process it takes to trick it takes longer than it does to actually do the work by yourself,
Hmm.
is what I've found. It's not worth doing, and there's many of these AI sites. One of my favorite ripoffs with AI is there are AI tools you could go to that will take your writing and humanize it. So it takes the AI written thing, AI written response, it humanizes it so that it can pass the zero chat GPT zero or GPT zero or zero GPT. And what's funny is I've actually analyzed one of those tools before. It basically takes your text that is AI written, misspells words,
Hmm.
changes the grammar so you sound like a third grader,
Hmm.
and that's what you're uploading. The one incident I found, it spelled California with a K.
Yeah,
And I thought, well, yeah, AI is not going to make that mistake, but a human that makes that mistake is not going to land a job anytime soon. Like,
exactly, exactly. So yeah, it's some interesting stuff, and uh yeah, I would say, you went to school, you did, you're trying to get into that job or whatever, but suddenly this, societal shift like it just gets dropped upon you. Don't fight it.
hmm
Try to find
yeah,
some way to use it, and taking a class and getting like a kind of a bit of a certification as to how to use AI too, and learn it essentially, because genie's out of the bottle, bottle is destroyed,
yep.
and nobody's building a new one. So
Amen.
might want to go through with that.
Let's
But
uh let's move on to the third phase that we came up with, which we're calling
uh,
midlife and older adults, which I actually sadly
yeah.
think that is us now.
Yeah, that's yeah, life comes at you hard, and it's like my grandfather always told me, it beats the alternative. But yeah, I'd say both of us are pretty established in our careers. I mean,
Mhm.
you were a high school principal. I've been working, in my industry for quite a while and everything. Now suddenly AI is here, and it hasn't um taken over us yet. It hasn't replaced us yet, but we're tasked with finding ways to make it better. I'd say people at our
Right.
level are.
hmm
I
And
would,
how do we use it? And we're still answering that question. That question has not
yeah,
been answered yet.
yeah,
In either
it's,
of our industries, and we're talking two different industries here,
hmm,
even though it's some could argue education is automated, which whole nother
yeah,
discussion in itself. But
yeah,
I go back to how do we use it at this point in our lives? And if I'm just getting started, trying to bring it back to the main point, what are some things I can do? Some of the things you could do if you're just getting started, you could do simple recipes, like healthy recipes. There's nothing wrong with that. Like
hmm,
say, here's the ingredients I have in my house. What's something healthy I can eat? It'll whip up
hmm,
a decent recipe for you. You can use health and wellness suggestions. I would take that with a grain of salt.
hmm,
You can use it to summarize long text, which at our age, time is a luxury. We both have children.
hmm,
So as a result of that, sometimes we don't have as much time to do things as we want, so we need things summarized for us. And there's nothing wrong with using AI to summarize things for you.
hmm,
I've actually used AI to summarize YouTube videos before. I
yeah.
don't have time to watch 35 minutes, so take a look at the text and tell me the gist of the main points of this.
Yeah, that's something I'd like to get into too. Then I can tell it to leave the opinions out of it, because sometimes I'm watching a YouTube video for information and the person will start rambling on with opinions and everything. But it's kind of difficult as to like how we would go about it, because we're either not going to be replaced within our lifetime, or we're going
hmm
to be slowly replaced by retirement. Um, I would say like if you're in, that situation, figure out what you can do with it.
hmm
Because, the knowledge that we like have, and others in our position have, we have knowledge of the industry on where it's been. And you got to know where you've been to know where you got to go. And I think that, with our knowledge and our experience and everything, people like in our age bracket, we can help, make this AI better for the next generation. It's kind of that old adage, you plant a tree so your grandkids can enjoy the shade. And I think that sort of
Ooh,
metaphor kind of goes along with this. I know I just got deep right there. Maybe that's everybody's aha moment. But I would say your kids are gonna be growing up with this. Like my kids are gonna start learning it faster than I think. I know your kids are a little bit older. They might be starting to learn a little bit already, but you know, make it good. I would say
Hmm.
like find a way to make it something good so it's not, a trash product going forward.
I love that. The analogy I use when it comes to an AI journey, how we're talking about getting started, I use the term compasses are greater than maps.
Hmm.
And it's right along with what you said. You need to experience it. You need to figure out how it works for you. You could follow the same path somebody else used with AI. That's not necessarily what you need to do. That's not necessarily going to get you where you need to go. You just need to go with it.
Hmm.
It's like a true journey. And you and I are about to go into the conversation of tools that we can use to get us started. But that's, I hope that's a big takeaway as well, is you know what you got to do to get started. You got to get started. And we're
Hmm.
gonna, when we wrap it up in a little bit, we'll talk about some minor tips you guys can do to get started. But as far as tools go, I think it's safe to say an LLM is probably the safest and best place to get started. And by
I
LLM, yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead, Brad.
no, I mean, I was gonna say I can't think of another area to start
Right,
besides like getting
it's
into an
easy.
LLM and
Yeah.
everything. And yeah, you can chat with it and ask it questions about, AI. What AI tools can I use for this? And I've
Yep.
used it to help develop workflows for everything. And I'm starting to look into agentic AI, like how to put
Hmm.
AI agents together, which that's a whole another episode right there. So stay tuned
Oh,
for that because
that's a big episode right there.
that one's coming up soon. And
Mhm.
I am asking an LLM like, how can I create a workflow for an agent? And I am asking it questions. It's giving me tips and everything. And I'm kind of filtering through it and everything, and it is actually helping me build an agentic AI. So,
Nice.
yeah, LLMs, there's no other place to start, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
And so for those of you who are listening, LLMs, the basic ones are there's the big three. There's ChatGPT, and again, you can just Google these, sign up. I got to say this: one of the biggest mistakes I made early on in AI was I would get duped that I had to buy the paid version of
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
You do not need to do that.
Hmm.
I tell everybody if I'm doing a basic workshop for how to use AI tools, I tell everybody subscribe to the big three, all three of them.
Hmm.
The big three would be ChatGPT, Claude, and Google Gemini.
Hmm.
And once you're out of tokens with one, go right over to the other,
Hmm.
and then go right over to the third one. And if
Hmm.
you run out of tokens, then wait a couple minutes and go back to, or not, okay, it's actually more like a couple hours, but that's only happened to
Yeah.
me like once or twice. If you're running out of tokens using all three, you're probably sitting down for too long.
Yeah, like go
Uh,
go outside, take a walk,
yeah,
go bird
enjoy the
watching or
day.
something.
But I would pick one of those three and I would just start
Mhm.
asking some fun questions. And I would probably
Yeah.
not choose work. I would probably choose hobbies or special interests. So if you're a historian, start asking it some questions. Have a conversation with it. See what it can do. Don't be afraid to say, where did you get your answer from? Don't be afraid to say that.
Yeah.
Don't ask it for fantasy football advice. It's terrible. Terrible.
Yeah, I don't know anything about fantasy football. But
Oh,
yeah, like one good thing I think we mentioned this before is a lot of these LLMs are starting to give source links, which I would
mhm.
encourage. Check those
Yes.
sources, look at those sources, and
Yes.
if any of the big LLM companies are listening to this podcast, which that would be wonderful, add your source links. Like keep the source links coming because if you start laying out the sources, then that's going to be a very good way to
Yeah.
go there.
It makes it easier to validate the response. It makes it easier to check it to make sure that it's real. Another thing
Yes.
to consider if you're just getting started is a lot of times tools that we have now have AI features built in them, and that might be an appropriate place to start. So, one of the
Yeah.
most popular image generators or generators is Canva. Canva has AI built into it. Don't be afraid to use it. If it already has it built in, use it. Copilot is a perfect example. We don't give Copilot enough love. I think that's the second time I've
Yeah.
said that.
Yeah.
Copilot is great if you have the opportunity to use it.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I have Copilot built into Teams at work. Like we use Microsoft Teams at work, and Copilot is now baked into Microsoft Teams, which
Hmm.
I use it a lot there when I'm, doing any kind of work or anything like that. But, keep going on that. And, other tools too. Don't be afraid to look at some other ones. I know Notebook LM is one of the big ones.
Hmm.
We've kind of touched on that.
We have.
Start learning that one. Like start to look at it. I
Yeah.
need to look at it more. And there's other ones too. It's not the only one. I'm kind of did a little search right there. Notion, Evernote, Microsoft OneNote is another one right there.
Oh yes,
Uh, yeah, I feel
No,
like
Notion is very powerful for the young, keeping you organized at work, keeping you organized in your personal life. Notion's very powerful organizer, date
yeah.
planner, lots of options. Notion's very popular. It, I've played around with it. It's pretty cool.
Hmm.
It is pretty cool to check out and play around with. Definitely watch some YouTube videos on that too.
Yeah, I would definitely like after an LLM look for something like that to sort of
Yeah.
use because I mean like I stated before, I'm kind of old school. Save my documents in my folder, in my C
Hmm.
drive, on my jump drive and everything. Now there's like you can save it to the cloud. You can put it in your Notebook LM, your Google
Yeah.
Docs and everything. And I feel like it's that full circle moment. Like I'm walking uphill both ways in the snow to school, all of a sudden with everything. But yeah, I would say, look up, something like Notebook LM, any of the ones we mentioned or anything like that, because those will like that. I think that's kind of the next step and what have you.
Right.
And, I would just kind of check all the tools that are available. I think it's kind of like the Wild West right now. I'm kind of
Hmm.
comparing it to the craft brewery uh
The movement.
explosion, yeah, that came out in the 2010s or whatever. There's
Hmm.
craft breweries everywhere, and then very few of them actually survived. And
Right.
there's a lot of good ones that like all the good ones survived. And that's kind of I feel like where a lot of these AI
I
tools are
agree.
right now
I
is
think we're
like
there. We're at that point. And
hmm
you know what? We got a couple minutes. I mean, I know we're past the usual time, but I do want to say this though. Maybe some of you want to do artsy stuff with it because
hmm
I'm not very good at art. I'm not. I never have been. I wish I was better. I've used it for image generation, and I know Brian has
hmm
used it for music generation. So
hmm
there are tools out there. I will tell you, if you are getting into this for the first time, Leonardo AI is
yeah
a phenomenal free.
hmm
You only get so many tokens a day, but it's a phenomenal free image generator. Go
hmm
on that, have some fun. Ask it to make a cartoon image of a cow fencing against a chicken with barnyard animals watching in the stands, like as if it's a sporting event.
yeah yeah,
You'll
that's
get
always
some
fun to do.
funny result. It is fun to do. It is.
Hmm
It's stupid. It's childish, but you know what? It's fun when you get an image like that. Lately, there's been a big kick on doing alien mosquitoes and like brightly colored alien worlds. And you know what? It's pretty cool to see this stuff. It's
yeah
enjoy it, have fun, but bottom line, start. And Brian, tell us a tiny
yeah
bit about the music ones you use.
Yeah, I've used Suno.
Okay,
I will
Suno.
say, the intro music to this podcast generated with Suno and
Hmm.
everything like that. And sometimes when I'm trying to put my youngest daughter to bed, I need some chill music. So I put together like some very chill music with Suno on a playlist and everything like that, which
Nice.
is nice there. And there's actually a lot of tools with some of these AI music generators right now where you can get your own kind of drum beat, add the drum beat, add some lyrics, write some poetry, and AI can mix it up together for you. So it
Nice.
could fill in some gaps. Like it could really fill in some gaps and everything. Because I also use what do I use? I use Copilot for the minimalist
Hmm.
thumbnails for the episodes of this podcast and what have you. And we stated this before. We don't have the resources to hire an illustrator. We don't have the resources
Right.
to hire somebody to make music for us. And that's kind of where that gap kind of sort of came in right there, is we use these sort of generators to fill in that gap. And kind of lost my thought for a second right there. But that kind of helps us out a little bit as
Well,
far as like kind of fine tuning everything.
yeah, and I think that's another example of how people in the midlife and later life can
Hmm
use AI tools to help them out to do things that we don't really have the time to do or the finances to do. I will
Yeah,
tell
yeah,
everybody, do not
because
pick a paid subscription until you know that's the tool you want to use consistently. I got burned way too
yeah.
much when I first started on my AI journey. That
Yeah,
is,
yeah, spending like a drunken sailor like that. Because, yeah, typically, like for images or what have you, people would put together a garbage image, or they would use like stock music or stock photos for
Right.
stuff like that.
I
And
remember that. Yep.
now stock photos are gone, stock music is gone. Um, I can't say that's a bad thing, to be honest with you, because
No,
now
I
it
would
like
have to
feels like
agree.
there's more. It just feels like there's more variety now. So,
There is. There's more
but
creativity as a result of AI.
yes,
I don't think
yes,
people were ready
but
for that. There really is more creativity out there because of that.
yeah. So, final thoughts from you, Adam. What do you think?
My final thought, if you want to get started with AI, the best example I can think of, the best thing to do is pick a tool and just start playing with it. It's that
Hmm.
simple. It is that simple. It's not hard. Get started with it. When you get enjoying it, watch some YouTube videos on how to do it better and interact with it better. That's my biggest
Hmm.
takeaway from getting started with AI. That's what I would do.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of echo that sentiment right there. Is just like pick a tool, start with it. Don't be afraid of it.
Yeah, you're not
It's
going to break
here.
it.
Yeah, it's here. You want to be judged by somebody, then like allow it to happen. Whatever. People have been judging new technology consecutively since the beginning of mankind.
Hmm.
So don't worry about that and everything. And you know. just enjoy it. And like I said, if you have gaps in your skills, this is where it's really going to start helping you with those gaps in your skills and everything. Because, like I said, we can't draw, we can't make music, but we can do like some simple art and music and everything like that. So just
Right.
have fun. Don't take it too seriously all the time, and just find the tool that's right for you. And yeah, with that note, we are going to be signing off right now. I would like to thank everybody for listening to the Layman's AI tonight. My name is Brian,
And I am Adam.
and we will see you next time.